But yeah, man. So if you look at it, Diaz, irrelevant. Kevin Holland, irrelevant. Kamaru Usman, irrelevant. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Sergey from MMA Soap Opera. If you're into MMA, into UFC, if you follow all the drama that is happening in the background, you're in the right place. So make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell so that you don't miss any upcoming videos. We're just having fun here, so you're welcome to join us. Quick audio plugin. Sorry for the noisy video, guys. Dealing with some technical issues this time around, but I'll make sure to solve it before the next video. Thanks. Today, we're going to be discussing the co-main event of the upcoming UFC card, the UFC 308, which is, of course, Khamzat Chimaev versus Rob Whittaker. If you want to know my thoughts on the main event of the evening, of course, Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria, I already covered that, so you can just click here. But now, let's jump into the topic of the day. Alright, so let's talk about Khamzat Chimaev, Boris, the Wolf, the most feared UFC fighter in UFC history. Of course, I'm over-exaggerating, but the truth is that whole bunch of fighters have been avoiding him for a real long time, but that was kind of in the past. We're gonna get into that. But they've been avoiding him for a really good reason. Of course, Khamzat is known for being ultra aggressive, super dominant, very imposing, quite scary fighter. For all the newbies, here's a real statistic to demonstrate just that. This is a statistic from November 2021. In his first 4 UFC fights, he has been hit in total only twice. He had 4 fights, and in those 4 fights, he was only hit twice. Hit twice. And in 2020, the dude got 2 very dominant wins against 2 UFC fighters within 10 days. That is unheard of. I'm pretty sure that he was also Fighter of the Year of 2020 together with Kevin Holland, which is kind of funny. But all the dominance and super activity, of course, started changing for him, unfortunately, when he got very, very ill in 2020 due to the sickness that was taking over the world. It almost looked like he is about to retire from the sport because the way he was talking on the Twitter and on the social media, it really looked like he's not doing well. But luckily, that of course didn't happen. He came back in October 2021 and put on a super dominant performance against Jin Liang. That's the legendary performance where he picked up Ling Jingliang, walked him across the octagon, slammed him on the ground, and started ground and pounding him while talking to Dana White before eventually he choked him out. Crazy stuff. Then of course he had the badass fight against Gilbert Burns, which went to the decision. That was of course the first time Khamzat was actually tested. And man, a lot of people had Gilbert winning that fight. That was the first time where he actually looked human, which of course encouraged a lot of fighters to start calling him out. And from that on, unfortunately, it's nothing but a shit show for Khamzat Chimaev. All of a sudden, he's starting to get booked to the fights that are completely irrelevant. Case in point, Nate Diaz. I don't think that he was even ranked at that time. That was of course his last fight on the contract. He was really trying to leave UFC for the longest time. Skill-wise, he was also far from being where he used to be in his heyday. Right before that fight, of course, Khamzat misses the weight in a spectacular fashion. He's almost flipping out people during the weigh-ins, while he's like 8.5 pounds overweight. Yeah, man, so he gets a last-minute replacement fight against Kevin Holland in the catchweight, which is of course also completely irrelevant fight for him. By the way, I'm only saying that these fights are irrelevant because Khamzat's ambition was of course to become a champion in 3 weight classes. So these fights against unranked opponents or opponents that are in the catchweight are just completely irrelevant for that particular goal. Anyways, of course he dominates Holland, as he should. Then 1 year passes and he gets booked of course against Paulo Costa, which would have been a really good fight, a relevant fight for him, but that unfortunately didn't work out. Paulo got some sort of a tennis elbow or whatever. So Paulo pulled out and they got a last replacement fighter, which was of course Kamaru Usman. Shout out to Kamaru Usman for taking that fight on like what, 10 days notice? But again, that's another irrelevant fight. Kamaru is going up a weight class. He has barely any time to prepare at all, which of course, if you would get booked to fight Khamzat Chimaev, you would want to get the full camp. But anyways, I'm pretty sure that Kamaru got paid like a king for that fight. But yeah, man. So if you look at it, Diaz, irrelevant. Kevin Holland, irrelevant. Kamaru Usman, irrelevant. So these were the last opponents and matchups for Khamzat Chimaev, the guy with this massive potential to become 3-division champ. Then another 1 year passes and he gets booked to fight Rob Whittaker, and that was amazing. When they announced that fight, I was like, now we're talking. But unfortunately, like less than 2 weeks or something before the fight, of course, Khamzat gets violently ill, like Dana White put it. So Whittaker, of course, he got put in the spot to fight Ikram Alaskarov instead on a very short notice. We're gonna talk about that in just a second. Of course, not all these circumstances are necessarily Khamzat Chimaev's fault, but if you add a bunch of irrelevant fights in the recent past, long gaps between the fights, problems with missing weight, and of course has this mysterious illness that keeps coming back. That of course makes it a terrible recipe for a fighter that neither the UFC or the fans can actually count on. But regardless, I'm actually not losing hope on Khamzat at all. I honestly think that this narrative about him not having a gas tank is slightly overblown. I already talked about it in one of the previous videos. A lot of people that are saying that are using the Kamaru-Usman fight as an example. The problem is, in my opinion, he didn't lose a gas tank in the second and third round. He broke his arm in the first round, so that's why he was slower and maybe more patient in the second and third round. And dude, he is still a force of a nature. But we just can't ignore the fact that only a couple of months ago he was again violently sick while preparing for the Rob Whittaker fight, and like looking at some of the photos that he posted during that time, I swear the guy looked like he's on the brink of death, and Rob had to get a last replacement fight against Khamzat. Alright, after a little bit of a downer, let's talk about a fighter that has a little bit more positive aura around him. I'm talking of course about Rob Whittaker, the future Hall of Famer, the former middleweight champion of the world, a legend of the fighter, but also super down-to-earth dude, really chill, very respectable guy, and last but not least, of course, super nerdy gamer. No, but for real, Rob is exactly the kind of guy that I would love to just hang out with, have some barbecue and just shoot the shit. Some of my favorite Rob Whittaker moments are not necessarily only the moments that are happening inside of the fights, but also his attitude right before fighting. Like, I love his walkouts, they are super intense, the dude is intensity personified. So yeah, like we said earlier, his last fight was of course against Khamzat. And even though Ikram landed a couple of times on Rob pretty well, it was obvious that Rob is just locked in, and he just straight up put Ikram to shame. Landed a really heavy shot on the chin, got him dancing, then after that he landed some more calculated shots, and dude, TKO'd him like an experienced legend that he is. So that was a really quick work. That took what, half a round? Before that, he of course fought our favorite Twitter troll, Paulo Boachinho Costa, who looked damn great in the fight, even though he was coming back after a real long time. If I remember correctly, he was really close to finishing Rob at like the end of the first round. But Rob of course kinda took over in the second and the third, and just did what he had to do to get the win in the bag.
I disapprove 100%.
So yeah, overall we know about Rob that at this point, even though he's only 33 years old, he's already considered a veteran of MMA and UFC. And apart from that strange loss to DDP, he actually looked like a champion in the recent history. So, Rob Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. How will this fight go? If you look at the new interviews with Khamzat Chimaev, he looks really calm, unusually calm. Of course, he changed a lot of stuff in his preparation. He changed the camp, he moved the country once again, now he lives in Russia. And looking at him talk, he really seems like he's doing really well. And despite yet another weigh-in controversy that we got this time, it actually seems that we might get the best version of Khamzat Chimaev yet. Which is a scary thing if you think about it. But regardless of all that, I actually think that still he's gonna get seriously challenged. Because Rob Whittaker is a beast, and he is his most relevant fighter in the recent history. And I would even say that he's his biggest challenge yet. Finally, we'll see Khamzat Chimaev fight against a fighter who belongs to the weight class, who is experienced in the weight class, and is clearly a championship level fighter. So yeah man, I'm pretty torn on this match as well, just like with Max and Ilya. I think that this is a 50-50 match as well. I'm slightly leaning towards Khamzat Chimaev, because Rob showed us in the past that he can be a little bit chinny. If we of course look at the first fight that he had against Izzy put him on skates, man. And I believe that Khamzat is more than capable to do the same. So yeah, my prediction is Khamzat Chimaev by TKO in maybe 3rd or 4th round. Thank you very much guys for watching MMA Soap Opera. If you like this video, make sure to hit like, but also don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so that you don't miss any upcoming videos. And with that said, I hope that you guys enjoy UFC 308. This was your host Sergey from MMA Soap Opera, because that's what it is.